Hi, now we're going to talk about presenting your speech. You've gotten it written and it's time to get it set so that you're presenting it in front of an audience. Let's get started learning the different things to keep in mind when you're presenting your speech. Let's start by looking at the score sheet. For the presentation of your speech, the area scored is the bottom section. It's worth 45 points. There are 3 areas which you are scored on. One is projection to audience and voice control. The second is eye contact and poise. And the third is appearance, how you dress. The first section that you'll be scored on for presentation is projection to audience and voice control. So make sure you breathe deeply. Breathing deeply accomplishes a few different things. Number 1, it relaxes you, taking in enough oxygen. The second thing it does is that it allows your voice to project better. If you're getting a full breath of air, your voice will come out more easily, and it will not sound shallow or weak. It'll be strong and it'll help it project. Vary your pitch. This is really important. If you talk in a monotone like this, you're going to lose the audience. But if you vary your pitch, like I am right now, you see my voice goes a little up and then goes a little down. Varying your pitch keeps it interesting. And if it is interesting, then the audience will pay attention. But if they get bored because you're speaking in a monotone, that's a very bad thing. And the judges will get bored of listening too. Enunciate your words. Well, what does that mean? It means you say them clearly and completely. So examples of things people say that show they're not enunciating are woulda, coulda, shoulda, wanna. None of those are words. Even if you read them somewhere, they're not words. What you should be saying is would have, could have, should have, want to. That's enunciation. And if you're enunciating your words, it shows that you've practiced your speech, that you're not nervous, and that you know what you're talking about. It inspires confidence into people listening to you. Speaking at a conversational pace is a great way to keep from speaking too quickly. When people get nervous, they tend to speak really fast. If you talk to the audience like you're talking with a friend of yours or maybe a family member and keep it at that pace, you won't be tempted to slide into speaking really, really quickly. If you're going to make a point, you want to stress something, have something the audience thinks about for a moment, or you want to stress a point that you're trying to make, pause after you make it. When you pause like that, it gives the audience a moment to digest and really think about what you're saying instead of anticipating what's next. And that'll mean they take more out of your speech. Pauses are also good if you end up losing your place. A pause is a good thing. Don't worry if you have to pause. The audience won't mind and neither will the judges. And speak loudly. This is very important. In 4-H, there is no microphone, so you need to project your voice so that the people in the front of the room hear you, as well as the people in the back of the room. They should both hear you very easily. Speaking loudly also keeps it interesting. If you speak quietly, you'll lose the audience. They won't pay attention to you because they don't know what you're saying, and you'll lose the judges. This is a common mistake when people get nervous. They stop breathing deeply, they don't project their voice, and they speak quietly. So even if you're doing everything else correctly, if you don't speak loudly, it doesn't make a difference. Body language. Body language is really important. It's about your whole body movement, whether you're standing still or moving around. If you're too jittery and you are pacing back and forth on the stage, that's very distracting. It's okay to move around the stage. You can come out from behind the lectern if you would like. Just make sure whatever you're doing is purposeful. It needs to have a point. And you want to make sure when you're standing there that you're relaxed, shoulders are down, you're balanced, you're not standing like this or like that, or you're not doing this with your legs. You're relaxed, balanced stance so that your shoulders are straight. One thing you do with movement is you can vary positions to provide transitions from one point to another. So right now I'm talking about varying positions, but you know what? Now that I'm talking about moving around the stage as it fits, it provides a transition from one thing to another. So you may be speaking on this side of the lectern, and then when you have a point to make or a transition about something else, you might move over more to this direction. And again, you don't have to speak in front of the lectern. And if you don't have a lectern, that's okay. You don't need one of these. You can speak just as effectively with just you and the audience. So remember, everything you do with your body, the audience is taking note of, and so are the judges. Gestures. Gestures are just as important as body movements, and they're a little more detailed than body movements. Move your hands with a purpose. Don't just flail your hands around and move them without a reason. Make sure there's a reason you are moving your hands. If you're just moving your hands around, it's very distracting. But you can make points with your hands and emphasize things. For example, conventional gestures. That's things like there are 2 cars in the driveway, or you need to stop right now. Those are examples of conventional gestures, and they really make your point even stronger. Descriptive gestures. Okay, these are important, and I've done a few of them. For example, remember I said the audience is out there? That's a descriptive gesture. You could say, it was a really long way away, or the road was curved like this. Those are things that help the audience see what you're doing, and they're not distracting because they have a purpose. Emotional gestures. These are really important too. You want to show anger or determination? Clench your fists like this. If you're shrugging your shoulders, it means you don't care. You're just indifferent to it. So emotional gestures are good too. Another area that you're rated on is eye contact and poise. So poise means how comfortable you are in your own skin, that you have control over yourself, that you have a presence about you. And eye contact is something we all talk about. You want to make sure that you're looking the audience in the eye, not to stare someone down, but move your eyes around and do look at individual people. And make sure that you make eye contact with the judges too. Don't only speak to the judges, make eye contact with the judges and the audience. They both want to see you, and they both want to feel like they are a part of your speech. Smile. Okay, we know we should smile, but sometimes when people get nervous, they forget to smile. They may even make a mean face or a sad face. Don't do that. Concentrate on smiling if it's appropriate. Now, if you're speaking about something sad in a speech, then of course you don't want to smile. But most of the time, you should be smiling. And if you think about smiling and to keep smiling, it'll actually keep you from getting more nervous. Don't read. Oh my goodness. Don't read. You've written this speech, you've taken all this time, and if you remember when we talked in the last presentation about writing your speech, I told you not to memorize your speech. You should know your speech, but you should be able to recite it without reading it down the page. It's okay to look down occasionally for notes, but you don't want to just read the page. If you're just going to read the page, then make photocopies of it and hand it to the audience and they can read it themselves. There's nothing interesting about having the speech read to them. Not only is it boring, but it shows that you did not practice your speech. Don't read your speech. Note cards with highlights. Do not bring up pieces of paper. Use note cards, little 3x5 cards or 5x7 cards. They do sell them in the store. You want to write highlights. Remember we talked about writing an outline for your speech? You want pieces from the outline or just quick words that'll trigger what you're trying to say and to remind you of what's next. And it's okay when you're giving a speech to look at your notes for a moment to remember what to say. The older you are, the less you should be looking at your notes. So by the time you get to be a senior, you can look at your notes, but you should look at them very infrequently. Practice, practice, practice. You cannot practice too much. The more you practice, the better off you'll be. And when you practice, don't memorize words, practice ideas. If you try to memorize your speech and then you get up there and say you get a little bit nervous and you forget what word comes next, you're going to stumble, you'll probably get more nervous. It's very, very scary. But if you practice ideas, then all you have to do is be thinking about your speech and what comes next. And it's okay if you use different words as long as it conveys the same meaning. Remember I said before, speak with a conversational pace. This is important when you're practicing. Every time you start your speech, finish it. If you get to a point in the speech where you pause because you forget, get right back on track and keep going. Go all the way through. And as you're saying the speech all the way through over and over, you'll get past that part where you stumble. If you keep stopping at the same part and then restarting without finishing the speech, your brain will get trained that that's when the speech ends, and you'll probably forget everything afterwards. Be sure to practice in front of a mirror. This is a great way to get started. You practice in front of a mirror. You can look at your facial expressions, you can look at your stance, your posture. You can see how much you're using your hands or if you're using them appropriately. And practicing in front of a mirror is a good place to work out the things that maybe you're not doing very well without having to show anybody else. When you're ready, you want to practice in front of family and friends. But you want to make sure that you tell your family and your friends to be honest with you and to give you suggestions on how you can improve your speech. You don't need them to tell you how great you are and what an awesome job you're doing. That's not what you need right now. You need to find out what it is that you're doing that needs to be improved upon. And check your time. Oh my goodness. Check your time. Once you've practiced it a few times and you know that you're not getting lost or getting nervous and stopping unnecessarily, or you're just stopping to pause, when you've got your speech down really well, check your time. And if you're not in time, then you'll need to go back to the beginning and either add things to your speech or take things away. So checking your time is very, very important. You will lose 5 points off your score if you go under time or over time. So now you're going to put it all together. Here's the parts that we've talked about today. Projection to the audience and voice control. Remember, you want the people in the back of the room to hear you just as well as the people in the front are hearing you. And you want to control your voice so that you sound calm and confident and that you've practiced your speech. Body language. It is just as important how your body appears and what you're doing with your body as what you're doing with your voice, because people are listening to you, but they're also watching you. And gestures are important because this is how you communicate a deeper message of your speech. You're emphasizing things, you're trying to color in your speech for the audience. They get a feeling more about what you think about the speech, whether you're far away from them or it's a long speech or you're only going to speak for 5 minutes. Gestures communicate and emphasize whatever it is you're talking about. And remember, you need to be looking not only at the judges, but also at the audience. Because if you never look at the audience, they're going to get bored and distracted because they don't feel like they're a part of what you're doing. So make sure you look at the judges and the audience. And poise means you're comfortable in yourself, that you have full control over what you're doing, control over your body language, your voice, your gestures, and that you're comfortable up there giving your speech. And finally, practice, practice, practice. You cannot practice too much. The more you practice, the less nervous you'll be because you'll be certain that you know what comes next in your speech. If you do all of these things, you're sure to make a blue ribbon speech. So get out there, follow the steps, and present your speech. Good luck.